wrecked. I'm overblown. I'm also fed up with having to wait another week to talk to you guys on Columbia House Party. I'm Blake Murphy. Jake Goldsbie, what's going on, man?
Damn, we're getting good at that. And by we, I mean you, because I don't do them.
Yeah, they're getting harder. They were getting easier for a little bit, and there were a couple smooth ones, and
we'll see what happens next week.
Yeah, this is that was not an easy one. I
No.
don't know. It's hard to do that one upbeat. Excited, I'm pumped, man. I'm excited.
This is
very excited for
this. This is a big one, I know, for you especially.
Yes. This is, I'm going to reveal some stuff about myself.
Let's do it.
I feel like over the course, we've made it very clear that at no point have either of us been cool, despite what we may have thought at certain points. I'm just going to.
What do you mean?
Let a lot of it hang out there.
I had so many black and white checkerboard wristbands. How could I not have been cool? Why are you talking
in the past tense?
That's true.
I've seen what you're planning for your wedding suit.
Don't let Cassie know that. She'll get mad.
No, the first ska wedding. Not the first ska wedding.
Definitely not
the first ska wedding I'll be at.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll have horns.
I'm ready to go. Don't worry. Skank down the aisle. Not a ska episode today.
Ish. Yeah. I feel like once there's a synthesizer involved, you're kind of getting close.
Yeah. A lot of synthesizer. Get that Moog fired up.
Love that Moog.
Get that fired up. This is one of the first episodes we're getting into where one of us hasn't picked the album because we think it is the band's best album, but it's the most interesting.
Yeah. I think that's
so this is going to be, to give you a heads up of how we'll structure this one, we might get into more of the debate part or talking about the post-album history of Motion City Soundtrack, because the album we're discussing today is, it's interesting in how it was made and how Motion City Soundtrack kind of came to be and the songwriting process, but more of our takes lie in the other Motion City Soundtrack albums.
I think that's fair.
This album became a defining sound of the emo pop or pop punk, if you prefer, movement, whereas Fall Out Boy was arena rock adjacent, Taking Back Sunday were more jockish, and My Chemical Romance and Panic at the Disco serviced the theatric crowd. Motion City Soundtrack filled the void for maybe those who didn't fit quite in one of those places, or they fit everywhere a little bit, just with their own spin on things. Aided by one of the most influential pop punk musicians of that or any other era, their second album locked in a unique sound that was distinctly theirs and remains distinctly theirs if you ever hear it. Today, talk about Motion City Soundtrack's Commit This to Memory. Semi-confident that if we cared not for people sticking around and listening to this podcast, I could give you every lyric off the album sequentially from there.
Really?
I think I could go on autopilot that much.
Wow.
This is among the albums I've listened to the most in my life. Not only because it came out earlier and you get the benefit of existing for a really long time, but because it kind of ruled and it meant a lot to me, as this band did. And that's kind of why I brought Commit This to Memory to the table today. Motion City Soundtrack are one of my favorite bands. This is maybe not necessarily their strongest album, but it is, I think, the most defining album for them and the most notable in terms of how it came to be and how they produced it. For me, Motion City Soundtrack has always been a band that I connected with because of Justin Pierre's songwriting. Obviously, they have a fun, upbeat sound that helps sugarcoat some of the punches that Justin Pierre packs. He has a hyper specificity in his lyrics that we, it was a Rivers Cuomo thing when we discussed Pinkerton. I think certainly he's probably borrowed from that at some point. It's a John K. Sampson special. We talked about that. There's a lot of, as you listen to Motion City Soundtrack, for me, spin on it was when Justin Pierre said that. Oh, I felt that shit. It's, lyric after lyric of, maybe the specifics don't matter, but the way he crafts a story and the way he builds an emotional feeling in each song has always really resonated with me. And he has a lyric about exactly why I like Motion City Soundtrack. And I don't think he means it, but he says on LGFUAD, it's the only way I've learned to express myself, through other people's descriptions of life. It's great for that. Justin Pierre does a great job describing things that you maybe can't describe yourself, although with some superfluous detail.
I think I have a different relationship with them than you do. I really like Motion Soundtrack, but I don't have really a huge emotional connection to them, but I quite enjoy them. I've touched on this before, they were definitely one of those bands throughout many years of their career, not just with this album, in my I'm liking this quietly thing.
Yes, that's fair.
When this one came out, everything was all right. It was a big hit. Everyone kind of knew it, so it was fine. I remember when I got back into them in university, it was like, can't let anyone know I'm listening to this pop punk shit.
Oh, man, you have so much of that.
I know. I know.
I feel
it's so
like
freeing now to not have to not do it.
It's weird because I didn't, especially when I was at university, I didn't talk to anyone about music, but I felt like, I don't know, I didn't have to hide it because nobody cared.
Well, the thing that I've realized as I've gotten older is that I didn't have to either.
Nobody cared. Everyone is way too worried about themselves to care.
Totally.
Jake likes Motion City Soundtrack. What a loser.
Totally. Absolutely. But I was the most self-conscious, no, everyone was self-conscious, but I was an extraordinarily self-conscious teen, early 20s person that.
Don't get me wrong. I understand that.
Yeah.
It just didn't apply to music for me. I was like, no, this was.
Music was so also tied into my identity that I think it was hard to. But now it's great. Now I can listen to whatever pop punk shit I want and have a great time.
By the way, do you remember a few episodes back when we were talking about the quadrant of this time, and we were kind of drawing Fall Out Boy and Take It Back Sunday, My Chemical Romance on there? I think I've expanded on it to where it's almost like an 8-pronged star.
Okay.
And you're going to, sometimes when you do personality tests or you are graphing NBA teams' pace and effective field goal percentage and other things, you get this like a web it creates. It creates a visual web kind of like, oh yeah, I'm an 8 out of 10 on this thing and a 6 out of 10 on this thing and a 4 out of 10 here. And it draws this web over 8 points. I think that's maybe where we're going to end up going more.
Probably.
Where, if you have Fall Out Boy here and you have My Chemical Romance here, Panic at the Disco is the
in the middle. Yeah.
And then you have an in-between to get to Taking Back Sunday. And then you have, Brand New is close to Taking Back Sunday, but takes you in another direction. And
yeah. And then as we've discussed, Bright Eyes in the Middle, because everyone listened to Bright Eyes, but no one talks about how they listen to Bright Eyes.
Yeah. They're the anti My Chemical Romance in that sense, where everyone now is like, oh, I was a huge My Chemical Romance fan. But everyone was a Bright Eyes fan. and just doesn't talk about it now. It's like,
no, we all have copies of I'm Wide Awake. It's morning. It's okay.
Motion City Soundtrack would be tough to plot on that board because their sound is unique, even in a genre where a lot of things sounded the same. The heavy use of keyboards, bells, the Moog synthesizer, which you love so much. Justin Pierre's voice kind of cuts through and it's a recognizable voice, and they have a very distinct sound. It's them. You hear Motion City Soundtrack, it's like, okay, that's Motion City Soundtrack. And a lot of the bands, we're going to talk about Warped Tour in a second. A lot of bands that are on that Warped Tour and went to Warped Tour a bunch of times, like you can't, if someone had heard that band before, but you mixed it in with 3 or 4 other bands from that era, they might not be able to pull it out. Yeah. Motion City Soundtrack, you're pulling out. You're like, that's Motion City Soundtrack.
As we're talking about, John K. Sampson with his influence on Justin Pierre and last week we were talking about the Weaker Than's influence lyrically on so many bands that we listen to today. I think with a lot of the young emo pop punk bands coming out today, you can really hear Motion City Soundtrack's influence on them. There's a lot of synthesizer.
They all have keyboards.
Yeah.
A lot of them, something that I'm sure you love is a lot of them are bringing horns back into.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I don't know that.
Devin K and the Solutions, baby.
Oh, love Devin K.
So good.
Devin K's I'm going to cover, but not really cover all your favorite pop punk songs.
Apparently they closed with My Own Worst Enemy at Fest this year.
Amazing.
Which rules.
But one of the first songs I learned to play on the guitar.
Really?
Yeah.
That kicks ass.
I only learned 6 or 7 songs.
But I think you hear the synthesis, you listen to a band like Telethon today, who I think are great. but you can hear a lot of that like Motion City Soundtrack style in their music. And I think that's becoming like, it's funny to me how they're a band that never quite reached that like Fall Out Boy, My Chemical Romance success apex, but have way more of an influence on the current emo pop punk scene.
Now, recognizing that Kevin Lyman sucks, and we know that now, Warped Tour was huge.
Yes.
And for this genre and this scene, multiple genres really, but this scene. And I think a way to describe that Motion City Soundtrack never really broke through but were influential is that they played Warped Tour 10 years.
Jesus.
They never got too big for Warped Tour.
Right.
But they were around and playing with all these other bands and clearly having some influence. Before we get into the meat of this podcast, there are 4 bands that played Warped Tour more years than Motion City Soundtrack.
Wow.
Can you get any of them?
No FX?
No. One of them is a really Jake band. Like early Jake.
Early Jake. Not Green Day.
No.
No, they only played like once or twice.
Think a little more ska.
I was thinking like, it's not Real Big Fish.
Real Big Fish played 11.
What? Really?
Yes.
Wow.
There's another Jake connection to one of them, but you'll hate that I made it.
Oh,
Less than Jake.
oh okay.
That
makes sense. They scream Warped Tour.
They are tied for the record with 13
both
appearances.
Both ska so far.
Yes. The other 2 are not ska.
Oh, well, then who cares?
Anti-Flag had 11.
Ugh.
Simple Plan had 13.
Really?
Simple Plan tied with Less Than Jake for the most with 13. And then Motion City Soundtrack's in 5th with 10.
For some reason, I feel like Simple Plan would have left Warped Tour scene behind like way.
I wonder if they maybe only had that bigger success in Canada.
That's true.
Like they had a little bit of the Tragically Hip thing where it's
But
like,
they're
oh,
like
you're huge here, but
they're like, I know like that first record is very much like Warped Tour pop, but like they're like a pop band in the later parts of their career.
So anyway, those are but I feel like
Life's a
Motion City
Nightmare,
Soundtrack playing
Just a
Warped Tour
Kid.
10 different years is like it's a pretty good signpost of
I'm going to be honest. That sounds like a fucking nightmare.
it sounds well, especially with everything we know now about
well, yeah. I mean, that
Warped Tour was
aside,
not the
but, like,
best. Let me take you back to one of their Warped Tour years. It's 2005. It's the summer. I've just lost a ton of weight the year before, and I think I'm cool now. I have a labret piercing and a faux hawk. My friend Jeff and 2 others, we go to Warped Tour in Barrie. It was cool, mostly cool. Lost my labret during Motion City Soundtrack's set. Not a pit-heavy performance for Motion City Soundtrack. No. At one point, I got knocked in the mouth, and I looked after, and my labret piercing was gone.
Do you know where?
No, I just got a new one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just there was a hole in my face for that day. I didn't have a beard at that point. So that is one connection I have to Motion City Soundtrack. We got a flat tire as we were leaving that day too, and everyone was like super mad at us. We're like on the side
because
of
we
the
were
road.
holding up everyone.
Yeah, and because it happened like pretty close outside of Molson Park, and everyone was pretty mad at us. It's one of 2 times that I've got a flat, and everyone was really mad at me at outside of a concert. When I saw, we had talked about in the Weezer episode, I saw Blink with Weezer and Taking Back Sunday.
Right.
My friend Dave had driven us all down in his minivan from Cambridge for that one, and his minivan broke down like in the amphitheater parking lot, and we were like holding people up, and people were very mad.
Oh my god.
And at one point I like started getting mad, and I was like, what, like, do you think we want to be broken down here?
These are all like scenes out of a Cameron Crowe movie or
it's
something.
really bad. The 2005 Warped Tour one, leaving and getting the flat was
yeah,
it sucked.
It's a bummer.
Yeah. And I was so sad. I had lost my face piercing. I was trying to be cool and come up with some sort of personality. But now I have this connection to Motion, one of several connections to Motion City Soundtrack, who we'll talk about after this. All right, so if you're a musician and you're into the punk or folk scene, it makes a lot of sense that you would gravitate toward the weaker thans who are from Winnipeg when you are in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where Motion City Soundtrack.
Another mini band. God, I love Minneapolis music. So many of my favorite bands are out of there.
1997, Justin Pierre and guitarist Joshua Kane create Motion City Soundtrack. Shortly after, they add Matthew Taylor, Tony Thaxton, and Jesse Johnson. Basically, the band is formed from late 2001 and has almost entirely stayed together. Motion City Soundtrack have taken breaks. They've broken up at some point, but whenever they've been playing, it's mostly been this group of 5. Not a lot of band drama as far as we can tell from the publications that are available. Jesse Johnson was taught the keyboard a few weeks before they recorded their first album. It was just like, we need a keyboardist. You're our pal. We can keep it really simple. So Josh Kane taught Johnson the keyboard a few weeks before they started recording I Am the Movie. Josh's brother actually came up with the name for the band. Also came up with the name for the album, I Am the Movie, which, to pull back the curtain here, one of my favorite ideas when we were brainstorming names for this podcast was I Am the Podcast.
That was a good one.
As a ripoff of I Am the Movie.
That almost made it.
It did. I think it made the final 5, right?
Yeah.
That we voted on and then didn't pick from.
None of those 5 are the name we came up with.
Because we got to go with Columbia House Party.
Because Blake just came up with it off the top of his head one day.
Yeah. They also shot the video for My Favorite Accident at Josh's brother's house. This is all per Emmy Magazine in an interview from 2004. Basically, Josh's brother had a
whole thing.
He's just, I guess he's just hanging out. He's like, hey, why don't you guys call yourself this? Hey,
I feel
call
like
the album that.
I feel like the unique keyboard sound that worked way better than Yellow Card's unique violin sound.
Although when Ocean Avenue hits and you're stopped at a red light, you can get an accident playing that fit. Look, from the East Coast, man. If we could get a fiddle on a track.
Yeah, fair enough.
Ashley McIsaac. Let's bring Ashley McIsaac back from that much
Ashley
music
McIsaac,
era.
come on, Columbia House Party.
Yeah. So Motion City had released a 7-inch and a couple EPs. They tried to self-record and failed. They hooked up with Ed Rose for $6,000 over 10 days.
Wow.
Recorded I Am the Movie. Justin Pierre told Vice in 2014 that at this point, his alcoholism, which is a consistent piece of his storytelling and his songwriting and the band's history, his alcoholism had already started at that point, but he did a good job of masking it by being either very hyper or hiding it from cameras. There was an I Am the Movie documentary they released way after the fact. One of the quotes from within is, "These guys are idiots and it must be magic. I don't know how they got anything done." Justin Pierre's alcoholism was bad enough, and I guess because he was the lead singer and had created the band or whatever, to release that album, they pried open floppy disks and put the CDs in the floppy disk and like sold those out of the back of the van and at shows and stuff. He did not help. He said, I had other things to do, like get drunk and fall down. Despite the challenges of Pierre's behavior and their general, not immaturity, but they were young. They were on a tight budget and a tight time frame. They produced a pretty good album in I Am the Movie, including this track, The Future Freaks Me Out.
Love that song.
Yeah, it's great.
I really like this album, actually.
You know who else loved that album?
Who?
Mark Hoppus of blink-182. Motion City soundtrack.
Is this our first Mark Hoppus reference on this podcast?
It might be.
Wow. We should have like a bell every time Hoppus comes up.
He's going to come up at some point. He's going to come up a lot. So Motion City soundtrack, we're connected with the clothing company Atticus. No one has said as much. It seemed like there was some, hey, here's some CDs for some gear kind of exchanges. Mark Hoppus was obviously close with Atticus. A friend of his at Atticus handed him a Motion City soundtrack CD and said, hey, like, you might like this. Hoppus later said on the DV documentary of the making of Commit This Memory, quote, "It sat in my car for about 3 months. I put it in and fell in love with it immediately. The Future Freaks Me Out was one of his favorite tracks. Enough so, and he liked the album enough that Blink-182 were playing in Europe and Japan in 2004. And at Hoppus' urging, Motion City Soundtrack played with them.
Man, Motion City Soundtrack opening for the self-titled tour? That would be a good show.
We've talked at points about the good fortune of some bands as they're coming up, like Third Eye Blind opening for Oasis,
right?
Because someone called Stephen Jenkins' bluff. Motion City Soundtrack giving copies of their album to someone at Atticus who told Mark Hoppus he might like it, who later found the album a couple months later and was like, we'll bring these guys on tour. Why not?
That's good hustle.
It is good hustle.
Getting this thing to the right guy.
Yeah, it's good. It's good work. I mean, hey, listen to my demo. Listen to my podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Mark Hoppus, come on Columbia House Party.
Never in a million years would he do that, but he would be so great. He probably cares so deeply about just some not great albums.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mark Hoppus had not produced an album at this point, but as the relationship developed and they were on tour together and Motion City Soundtrack were talking openly and getting Hoppus's feedback on some of their ideas for their follow-up to I Am the Movie, the band basically just asked him to come into the studio with them. They were recording at a house that used to belong to Toto's drummer. Sure. It was a 2-bedroom house with 6 guys. They spent all day there recording and then they would stay there at night. Mark Hoppus was basically like, there's a documentary of the making of this album.
I'm assuming Mark Hoppus didn't stay.
He did not. He drove home at night.
Yeah.
He was amazed at the fact that they could spend that much time together. At that point, he was probably amazed that, bandmates could
like each other.
Yeah.
I do love this idea that Mark Hoppus is like taking this band under his wing, producing their record, but not going to put them up anywhere with all of his money. No. Just you guys can stay in cramped quarters. I'm going home to my mansion.
In an interview with Epitaph in 2005, Motion City Soundtrack said that the neighbors called the cops on them regularly because of the noise recording. At one point, Mark Hoppus was like out on the lawn, just messing around with different percussion sounds. And like the neighbors were just super unhappy about these 6 guys in a 2-bedroom house next door.
That's fair.
Recording all day long.
I feel like I get that. I feel like I would be mad about that too.
Anyway, Motion City Soundtrack said they told Artesia News Service in an interview, quote, "We handpicked Mark Hoppus more than he picked us." The nice thing with Mark Hoppus is the way he was a guy that would come in, and if we were second guessing something, he was usually the guy to be like, no, it's good. Or you're right, it's terrible. Hoppus hadn't produced at this point. So this was a new experience for him as well. He was pretty into it. By all accounts, he was very hands-on. One thing that I ran into in going over some of the interviews from the time, some of the, Hoppus has given some retrospective interviews. There was even Hoppus and Motion City Soundtrack just like had an in conversation article piece at one point. And then the documentary on this as well. Everyone's goofing around, like not goofing around like slapstick comedy or anything like that. But everyone's so sarcastic and tongue-in-cheek. It was kind of hard to tell who was being serious when. They were saying like Mark Hoppus like physically beat his ideas into them. And like obviously that didn't happen. But like a lot of the stuff is like, well, I don't, it's hard to tell exactly what the relationship was like. Hoppus described it. It was good for me to learn other people's points of view of music. The greatest thing about being in a studio when a song is being written is it's all these different ideas creatively coming together to form one song. I love it. Hoppus had big ideas for what he wanted Motion City Soundtrack to be. And Motion City Soundtrack had a really good handle on who they were already and what they wanted to do. But Hoppus wanted them to be, in quote, big, sloppy in the best ways, huge guitars, just great American rock and roll music taken a different way. Mark Hoppus, so involved that he does the vocals on a track called Hangman.
And verse I don't deserve, I might run, but I'll never hide. Hey, that's not right, you can't complain. Everything's gonna be just fine. To the flags you died in line. Memory serves, they mark my words. This kid's come past me if you can. Everywhere
hard to pick Hoppus out there, even toward the end of the song when it kind of hits the refrain. But you can also get a good sense of Motion City soundtrack sound, which they had, you know, was already pretty well established on Eye in the Movie.
Yeah, Eye in the Movie's great. And it is, I mean, we sort of touched on this a little bit a couple minutes ago, but it is interesting to me how their sound is so unique in the genre, especially in like between Pierre's vocals and the synthesizer. Like
the keyboards, like at that, now everyone kind of has keyboards.
Yeah, but back then.
Yeah, like they were one of the only bands I saw at that 2005 Warped Tour with a keyboardist.
I feel like I remember back then bands that were in like the punk or punk adjacent scenes like got shit on for using keyboards.
Yeah.
I was like, this isn't punk. You're doing like...
Also, watching them use the Moog synthesizer live is really funny.
Why?
It's just like, it looks weird. It's not an instrument you see play. I was like, what the heck?
So that's like kind of the tiny, like the mini Moog thing. Yeah.
It's a little weird. So there's a lot going on. And for as much as Hoppus had big ideas himself, Motion City Soundtrack had big ideas as well. There's a lot of, if you listen to their songs, sometimes they sound not poorly produced, but there's just so much going on that like sometimes they're on top of themselves.
They overreach a lot.
Yeah. Hoppus had joked that Pierre and Kane would, quote, battle for who can come up with the most guitar parts to fit into one song. I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
There are some points where there's just maybe a little bit too much going on, but it works mostly. I feel like it adds to the kind of frantic energy that Justin Pierre has as a singer in the more manic songs.
Yes, and I think that manic is a good word for this album.
Which, you know, fits where Justin Pierre was. About half of this album was written while Pierre was still struggling with alcoholism, and about half was written while he was in recovery.
Interesting.
And you can't really pick out which songs are which, with the exception of LGFUAD, which is something he allegedly yelled from the top of a merch table at one point. I forget who they were playing with when he did that, but that's anyway. So the Hoppus connection worked well. We're going to talk in more detail about it, but the Hoppus side of it was good enough that Motion City Soundtrack played with Blink on their reunion tour. Hoppus also produced My Dinosaur Life, Motion City Soundtrack's fourth album. Hoppus went on to produce a lot of stuff. He produced some Fall Out Boy albums, also some Newfound Glory.
Really?
It wasn't all bad.
I didn't know he produced Newfound Glory.
Yeah. He's also, here's how we're going to get Hoppus on the pod. There's a little bit of a feud brewing here. We like to take credit for the My Chemical Romance reunion.
As I think we should.
We willed it into existence. Well, Hoppus took credit for the Jonas Brothers reunion.
Oh.
He took credit for Motion City Soundtrack reuniting. And he said after the Jonas Brothers and Motion City Soundtrack, after he took credit for both of those, he was like, My Chemical Romance is next.
Huh. Well, sorry, Mark. That's our doing.
His doing was Commit This Memory, which was released June 7th, 2005. Kind of in that post-Deja Entendu dashboard, tell all your friends, say anything. It's kind of, I guess, like the third quick succession wave of the emo pop side. It's I don't know where exactly you draw the lines, but I feel like Deja and Tell All Your Friends are like a step before this.
Yeah, I think
obviously
so.
in timeline they are, but I feel like in sort of the waves these things came in. One of my favorite things about the album is it's the perfect length. It's 12 songs at 39 minutes.
It's hard to beat that.
Yes.
To your point about Hoppus in the studio, I think that we were talking with Third Eye Blind about how they really needed an editor.
Yeah.
And I think it sounds like Hoppus did a very good job.
Yeah. Hey, we've all got these big ideas, but you got to keep it tight.
Yeah.
Like, we know how to get pop punk songs on the radio.
Like most of these songs aren't longer than 3 minutes long, which is perfect.
Yeah. They average 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Perfect. That's the perfect song.
And I mean, Hold Me Down as the closer just like drifts on and on kind of. It helps to have a minute and a half as an opener too.
That's true.
One of the reasons I like this album and Motion City Soundtrack in general is it's a pretty touching and sad and in points optimistic. The best way I could describe this album, maybe it's projecting because Pierre is writing his own experience, but it feels like a very empathetic album. It's very truthful. It's very genuine. A lot of what he touches on thematically, maybe you can't relate to the substance abuse. Maybe you can. Maybe you can't relate to the bad relationships. Maybe you can. There's some mental health aspects as well. I think most people can probably check off one or two of those things. So I don't know. It felt like there was an understanding in the lyrical content and the softness of his delivery at the key emotional points of his song. And a lot of these songs are manic, but there are soft points, and he hits those really, really well. And I think the contrast of, hey, we're having fun and we're a little manic about this, but the content isn't, the most upbeat. I think it just works really well together in terms of an accessible album that you can emotionally connect with. Whereas we've talked about some accessible albums where you in particular don't have an emotional connection to.
Yeah. I mean, like I don't have an emotional connection to this album, but I agree with you that I think that the songs that hit those specific emotional moments, definitely the way he sings about the themes specifically and the type of his lyrics, I think lend them to be very accessible.
Yeah.
This kind of thing.
And like Everything Is All Right is just kind of him like going through this OCD spin cycle of like, I'm stressed and I just can't stop doing stuff and I can't sit still. He told Pure Grain Audio in 2015, looking back on it, at that time I was a giant drug addict, drunk, fuck up. People would tell me stories about all these things that happened and I would have no idea. And yet I was succeeding in a band. LGFUAD is kind of about that. As they were working on this album, he was seeking help for the first time during the writing. So half the album is him still messed up and half is him in recovery. LGFUAD is one of the more recognizable tracks on the album.
Let's get fucked up and die. I'm speaking figuratively, of course, like the last time that I committed suicide, social suicide. Yeah, so I'm already dead on the inside, but I can still pretend with my memories and photographs I've learned to love the lie. I wanna know what it's like to be awkward and innocent, not belligerent. I wanna know how it feels to be useful and pertinent and have common sense, yeah. Let me into the club 'cause I wanna belong and I need to get strong, and if memory serves, I'm addicted to words and they're useless. In this department, let's get fucked up and die. For the last time we're feeling, we'll try not to smile as we cover our heads and drink heavily into the nights that still shock and surprise. I believe that I can overcome this and be everything in the end, but I choose to abuse for the time being. Maybe I'll win, but for now I've decided to die. Mr. Soldier, you've been such a positive influence on my mental frame. If I could ever repay you, I would, but I'm hard up for cash and my memory lacks initiative. Goddamn, the liquor store's closed. We were so close to scoring. It hurts, it destroys till it kills. I am tired and hungry and totally useless. In this department,
Great song.
Great song.
I didn't love it initially. I felt the main "Let's Get Fucked Up and Die" part and some of the like more heavy-handed metaphor to just like be a little much. But then when you really get into it, this is like lyrically, this is a really relatable song. Like there's a lot going on within the context of this song where it's not even, other than the "Let's Get Fucked Up and Die" part, it's not at all clear. Well, there's a liquor store, like a goddamn the liquor store's closed at the end too, but it's not immediately clear that that's what this is about. This
No.
could be about a lot of things you could be going through. And I feel like that, not generic, it's not generic, but you know, that's...
I'm curious
It's
also
open.
as to whether this song has been unfairly misinterpreted by fan bases as well. Because like it is a rallying cry in a way of saying, let's get fucked up and die. And then even though it's a very sad song about alcoholism
Yeah.
and addiction, I feel like it's probably a song that people are like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's get fucked up and die.
Yeah. And the back and forth of like, I've got it figured out or I can accept this, but actually I'm still a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And
It's that, yeah.
it's a heavy song for a really light, more acoustic-y than anything else on the album. It stands out a lot as you're listening to the album. Like it almost, and I think that serves a purpose, that it sounds a little different than the rest of the
I think so
songs.
too. And I think I agree with your point too, that like this song did not do a lot for me in 2005, 2006. And now I'm like, oh, it's a great song. It took me a long time to appreciate this one, I think.
This album has a lot of good tracks, I feel. I don't like Attractive Today as an opener
Really?
very much.
I love a quick little opener.
I do, you know, back to my batting order sequencing, put your fastest guy in the leadoff spot.
Of course.
Get those stolen bases. If you listen to I Am the Movie, obviously you don't have to listen to albums in order. Everything Is All Right builds off the final track of I Am the Movie really well.
Okay.
Everything Is All Right is also like the tone setter for the album. Like you get the idea of what this album is about and what the sound is immediately off of Everything Is All Right. It's also just, it's a kick-ass song.
You can see why it's the lead single.
Yes.
Like it's one of those songs where we've talked before about bands like don't have quote unquote a single on the record. Like I don't think Reconstruction Night has a single.
Right.
Everything Is All Right is your single.
Maybe not the best track on the album, though. There are a lot of really good tracks. The top middle of this, like when you go Resolution, Feel Like Rain, and Make Out Kids, you're kind of going up and down a little bit. And I feel like it's lulling you to LGFUAD. And then the last couple songs are like really emotionally packed songs. And I like that sequencing of like, hey, we're having a little bit of fun. Everything's going to be all right. We're going to play around with some relationship stuff. When You're Around is a really weird kind of love song, and I like it so much.
It's very much a song to me anyway, and maybe I've read it incorrectly my whole life, but to me it's very much a song out of 2006 pop punk.
Yes, it does.
And I don't even mean that necessarily in a problematic way. It's just like lyrical content, sound. It's like, oh yeah, I know exactly how old I was when I first heard this song.
Yeah, Resolution's kind of similar. Like I've always thought of Resolution as like it's the anti-Josie.
Yeah.
Whereas Blink-182 is like, this girl's amazing. Why is she doing all this awesome stuff for me? And then the Resolution is kind of like, that's cool, but here's why Josie
why.
actually sucks to live through.
Yeah.
When You're Around it's one of my favorite tracks on the album.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's right there.
No, I don't think it's
right
my
in the
favorite
mix.
either.
We're not going to do a whole ranking of the songs, but what is your favorite?
I think Time Turned Fragile is my favorite.
Okay.
I'm not like this with every band, but with most of the soundtrack, my favorite songs of them tend to be their faster, punkier ones, and I feel like that's probably the fastest, punkiest one on this record.
Yeah, they kind of sandwich LGFUAD with that and Better Open the Door, with are both two of the faster, punkier songs, and probably could have been singles
for sure
on their own if there were going to be more singles off this. The biggest thing that stuck out to me re-listening to this a lot is there really aren't weak spots.
No, it's a really solid record.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
really deep. And that's again the benefit of it being short too.
Yeah.
Is you're not going to hit those lulls.
Better Open the Door and Together We'll Bring in the New Year have never done a ton for me. I don't think they're bad songs by any means, but that they're definitely like if I was skipping through, they're the two I skip the most, I think.
I have seen the argument that Hangman should close the album. It is kind of powerful toward the end.
Yeah.
It's got the Hoppus vocals. You know, it has the my favorite movie trope of, oh, they said the name of the album. Like Commit This to Memory is not a song title. Commit This to Memory is not a song title, but it's a lyric in Hangman.
I will say I love when bands do that, when they
Absolutely.
don't have a title track, but it's in a song anyway.
Absolutely. I love Hold Me Down as a closer.
Me too.
I think
it's a great song.
It ends this whole up and down emotional swing of an album on this unsettled and deeply, deeply sad note. The backstory is he found a note in his couch one day. It was not this note, but it gave him the idea of like, wow, what if someone just like left and that was all there was a note. So this didn't, this is him thinking what that would be like. And it's, man, the talent of a songwriter to like pack that much emotion into a hypothetical.
They are excellent at writing album closers.
Yeah. I love Hold Me Down as a closer. I think it's pretty close to a perfect closer in terms of wrapping up what the album is, as it turned out, setting you up for the next album.
I found a letter that said, I'm sorry that you were asleep when I wrote these words down. You'd think I ought to be used to that by now. Save for a few of those late night episodes, missed opportunities, and I don't care. There's not a lot that I feel obliged to share or talk about. I'll have my brother stop by this Saturday to pick up my things, just make sure you're not there. This may sound bad and don't take it the wrong way. I love you, however. You hold me down. You hold me down. You hold me down. You hold me down. Echoes of my everything. You're the emptiness the whole world sings at night. You're the laziness of afternoon. You're the reason why I burst and why I bloom. How will I break the news to you? How will I break the news to you?
I think it's really interesting that you said that you feel that it sort of like sums up what the album's about. And I find that is very interesting with bands and albums that are not concept albums,
Right.
which we've talked about a couple on this show. This is not a concept record, but I do think it's interesting that he was able to write sort of a summation or a concluding paragraph, whatever you want to call it, with this song that's like, it could work as the closer of a concept album in, air quotes, but it's not. But it still sums up what it's about and what he's trying to say and get across.
Had this album been structured a little differently, like say you took a lot of the themes, and like there's obviously a lot about relationships and the effect that alcoholism or drug abuse can have on a relationship, you could probably pull those things apart in like machete order, like Star Wars, and put them sequentially, and Hold Me Down would still be the closer. And I think that's why it works so well, is like you get, even if it's not telling one cohesive story, it gives you... It's just
like little vignettes, and then
it wraps it up well, and then you're just so sad at the end. And then for the days where you maybe were listening to this on a CD in your car, the fact that it loops right back into the start, where after you've listened to this really sad closer, you get punched with these two back-to-back upbeat, we can get through this songs.
Yeah,
obviously that's like not everyone will have consumed this album that way.
When it came out, most people did.
Yeah. We are going to talk about how that album was received, the influence that it had, and then the albums that followed it. After this. So Commit This to Memory is one of 6 albums that Motion City Soundtrack ended up producing. It is Justin Pierre's favorite Motion City Soundtrack album.
It broke them, so obviously, of course it is.
At the time, though, it got mixed, mostly favorable, but mixed favorable, I would call it, reviews. It was kind of highlighted for the maturity, intelligence with in contrast to the rest of the genre. At the time, you mentioned there's one track that was very, 06 pop punky.
Yeah.
But this level of empathy and introspection was not the norm quite yet. In 2016, Noisy called Motion City Soundtrack, and quote, the band that was a gateway to good music. So even if you didn't like Motion City Soundtrack, it opens you up to this type of songwriting and this type of, emotion in music that isn't angry and projecting. It's a little more internal. There are a few bands who you might like, who really liked Motion City Soundtrack. Cameron Boucher of Sorority Noise told Consequence of Sound in 2016, and quote, it was an initial change in my fucking life. It just started opening me up to an entire world of music I never heard before. And regarding Hold Me Down, the closing track specifically, when they were on tour together, he said, I wanted to tell Justin that whole tour how every night being able to see them play Hold Me Down and how much of a vast impact that song had in my life. I've listened to it. I've cried to it. That song has meant so much to me.
Wow.
Sorority Noise, another band that puts a lot of emotion in their stuff. I don't know where some of the question marks about Sorority Noise ever landed, so we won't talk about them too much yet. Jay Gould of Modern Baseball and Slaughter Beach Dog directly references Future Freaks Me Out on Redo. He says it's one of the biggest influences from that record specifically was Time Turned Fragile, which you said was one of your favorite.
Guys named Jake just love Time Turns Fragile.
He continues, that was one of the first songs that I must have heard that didn't really have a chorus. It just had all these really intense verses where he's saying a lot of random things that have happened, which I totally jacked from them. Like in Redo, where he references the Future Freaks Me Out.
I want to start from the top. Maybe like a do-over. Replace the voices in my head with blind innocence. I want a complete redo. Maybe change my name. Report the losses, grab the claim. It's a shame, it's such a shame. We're pissing away our time, 'cause we're pissing away these beers. No monumental moment ever came from saying, come on, dude, just take one more shot. Try to forget that your bones will dismantle and the dreams you had, they'll collide with time. Your unrequited love for life will surely halt that. I'm thinking way too much tonight. Maybe I could just move away or go extinct like Triceratops, but I love watching movies, sitting back in and also breathing. My family and friends would be crushed, but is it enough? Oh, the future freaks me out, but I guess I could just curl up in a ball and try to forget that your bones will dismantle and the dreams you had, they'll collide with time. Your unrequited love for life will surely halt that. I'm thinking way too much tonight.
Josh Martin of Wonder Years also said that Motion City Soundtrack made him want to start a band. He said, they're a seminal band for a lot of punk bands, trying to play music with substance that's insightful and passionate.
I realize it now in sound of a lot of bands. I don't think I realized how monumental they were to a lot of bands.
Yeah, we've touched a couple times on how as this pop punk and emo pop, however you want to qualify it, was happening in the early to mid 2000s. You know, there were different streamlines where, okay, over here we still have really, problematic in 2019 lyrical content. Here we're being really sarcastic about that we're bad. Here, we're starting to get into, maybe we're the problem. And there are kind of a couple different ways it goes. And I feel like, the stuff that I really like now follows the Motion City Soundtrack, if not sound thread, the kind of emotional thread of
the introspection and the embracing your own issues and problems and talking about them.
Yeah, and speaking about that openly. And it's something we talked a lot about, how My Chemical Romance and the reaction to My Chemical Romance more than anything pushed that conversation. Well, now that's a standard part of songwriting.
Yeah, it seems so silly. It seems so silly that was ever a controversy.
Yeah, and it's cool for me because Motion City Soundtrack meant a ton to me. I had no idea it meant so much to a lot of bands that I really like now. It was not, the most successful album. It debuted at number 72 on the Billboard 200. It hit number 2 on the indie albums chart. At last update, it had sold roughly 500,000 copies. So one of the least successful commercially albums that we've discussed on this podcast so far won't be the least successful. We'll get into some albums.
Give me 2 weeks.
Yeah. So in the aftermath of Commit This to Memory, Mark Hoppus becomes a fairly legitimate producer, continues on with Blink-182 and Boxcar Racer and Plus 44 and
reasonably successful career.
Yeah, he's been all right. He won't come on the podcast and debate us about who brought.
He went on 155. There's no reason. He went on 155. We could get him.
We can get him.
Yeah.
We'll just tell him you don't have to talk about Blink-182. Talk about some of your other favorite albums. Plus 44. I like the Plus 44.
I do too.
Album. It's really
When
good.
Your Heart Stops Being's a great tune.
Yeah, it's good.
They're better than Boxcar. Is my hot take for the day.
Also, Plus 44 is just like what I imagine Blink would have sounded like if just Tom left.
Yeah, and they had.
I mean, I know that's what Boxcar was supposed to be, but I feel like Plus 44 found the stroke a little bit.
I think so too.
Also, probably unnecessary for those to be different bands.
Yes,
we don't need multiple off the side projects. Anyway, Motion City Soundtrack continued on. They made Even If It Kills Me in 2007. Hoppus was back to help produce My Dinosaur Life in 2010. They make Go in 2012. Panic Stations in 2015. In 2016, they announced a breakup. 2018. Justin Pierre reveals that maybe they're not broken up. I don't know, because he released a solo album called In the Drink that Kane assisted on the production on anyway. And it sounds a lot like what you would think a 7th Motion City Soundtrack album would have sounded like. There's a video for one of the songs where I think he's wearing a GoPro and it's just like looking at his face as he's like wandering around panicky. And it's like, yeah, this is a Motion City Soundtrack video.
Seems in the vein.
So Jake.
Yes.
As fond as I am of Commit This to Memory, and as much as I don't want to speak for you, but going back and listening to this, pretty solid album.
Great
right?
album. Yeah. I talked in the My Chemical Romance episode about when my friend got married in Ottawa, and Cassie and Kramer and I drove to Ottawa, listening to pop punk the whole time. This was one of the albums we listened to. So it's definitely still in like the canon, the lexicon, the whatever you want to call it.
Echelon? What is it? The Pantheon?
The Pantheon, yes.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it's certainly for that moment, it's in the Pantheon.
Yeah.
However, we are both going to argue that while this album was their most important,
it's not their best.
And how it came to be with Hoppus and everything, and kind of the timing of when they broke through, it's the album we had to talk about for this episode. We couldn't really talk about the follow-up.
It's neither of our favorite Motion City Soundtrack. Right?
And I think we have different favorites.
I think we do too, actually.
Jake, let's talk about the album rankings for these 6 Motion City Soundtrack albums, only 4 of which the rankings really matter. Go and Panic Station, whatever order you want to put them through, I think are 5, 6.
I'm going to be completely honest. Until about an hour ago, I forgot that Panic Stations even existed. I've never listened to it, which I'm going to put and from what I understand from fan reactions, it's probably at 6 regardless.
I think it's
Or
actually
5.
5. I think it's better than Go.
Yeah, Go would be my 5th.
I know the band also doesn't like Go.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they said that they think that they like the songs. I think Justin Pierre described it. He likes the songs, but every time they play them live, the set hits a lull.
Yeah.
Like they just it doesn't.
I found the album to be quite boring.
Yeah.
I listened to it. I found it disappointing, but I think it's the first 4 are really the ones.
The fact that after Go and Panic Stations, they broke up and like part of it was like Pierre was just like, I'm gonna live a domestic life now.
Yeah.
And like
that's you can kind of hear it on the record.
Yeah, you can hear it happen. Look, I want everyone to be healthy and happy and grow up and be mature.
Of course.
The content gets a little less punch after My Dinosaur Life.
So My Dinosaur Life is my favorite. I think it's one of the best emo pop punk records. I was never a huge Motion City guy until a little later. Like I kind of missed the train. I'd listened to Commit This to Memory when it came out because I saw the Everything's All Right video. I was like, I like that song. But I didn't listen to I'm the Movie till I was in university. I didn't listen to Even If It Kills Me till university. I didn't listen to My Dinosaur Life till university. And I think I came across an AV Club review of My Dinosaur Life and they gave it an A, which I think it was an A, maybe it was a B. It was a high ranking. And if you were in sort of that early 2010s, late 2000s Pitchfork world, those publications giving like emo and pop records good reviews was rare. So I was like,
even in 2010 still.
Yeah. So I was like, I got to listen to this record and it kicks ass.
I'm very fond of this record also. I have a personal attachment to it. So around this time, I was living in Kitchener. I was post University of Queens. And this is before I had tried writing as a career. I was dating someone who lived in Toronto. That is not a long drive. It's maybe an hour to an hour and a half. If you catch some traffic, it can get as long as 2 hours if you're driving at rush hour. This was a commuting album for me.
Okay.
It was a lot of driving back and forth, and this was the album I was listening to at the time. It was also around the first time as an adult I was trying to get help for some mental health stuff. There is certainly some reference to that on this album. Also, a lot of the songs just kick ass.
Yeah. My only personal connection to this, and it's my only personal connection to this band at all, was when my girlfriend, who I was dating in my last year of university, I knew she was going to break up with me. It was one of those like, I got to text her because I know she's going to be like, we got to talk. And that's exactly what happened. I was walking around my neighborhood
killing time,
trying to get up the balls to send the message listening to this album. And that's my only connection to it.
Is there a particular song?
No.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Because I thought you were going to say the song that I think is like, if it's not their best song, it's a top 3 Motion City soundtrack song. Her Words Destroyed My Planet is
great song.
Awesome.
Maybe you were right after all. Maybe I'm just bad news. I've been drowning in memories. Call it residual blues. I fell asleep watching Veronica Mars again. Fucks with that tourniquet. I tried to squeeze on your dreams. Slugging on, it's a perfect fit. What do you suppose that means? My parents keep asking when you're planning on coming around. If we'd only stay together, I might not have fallen apart. But the words you said destroyed my planet. That's all my default. If we'd only stay together, I might not have fallen apart. But the words you said destroyed my planet. I stole before I start. I stole before I start. Anything at all.
The top half of this album also just has like a ton of
Disappear is one of my favorite tracks.
I've been a good little worker bee. I deserve a gold star. I mentioned
I
earlier
felt
when
that
Justin Pierre said I deserve a gold star. I felt that shit. Delirium is kind of like a fun all over the place.
Yeah.
It's a little weird, but it's a fun song.
To the point of what I sort of touched on earlier about album closers, I think The Weeknd's is one of their best songs because you are the sort of the MCS resident here. What is your 1 through 4 in order?
You want to talk about good album closers? Even If It Kills Me is, I don't want to put like a definitive ranking on it, but it is one of my all-time favorite songs. We could play a game on this podcast or with listeners at some point. The half sleeve I have on my right arm, it doesn't have like any band logos or anything like that, but it has a bunch of more subtle music references. Maybe not that subtle. I mean, like you could look at it and be like, oh, that's that. But there are like close to a dozen that you'd like have to pick out of there.
Okay.
It was like fairly carefully designed that way.
I like
my tattoo artist at Very Lame on Instagram. If you want to give her some business, she's great. Her name's Jenny. Anyway, Even If It Kills Me is referenced within my sleeve. This album came out in 2007. Around though 2015, I was in not a great place the summer of 2015. I was just coming out of a tough breakup. I was very unhappy in my job and was considering either a career change or taking the leap that I ended up taking and going freelance full time to try to go down a different path with work. But I was just mostly not in a great place.
A transitional year, let's call it.
Yeah, at least a transitional summer and fall. So I revisited this album around that time. I got really into running around then. So I had talked a little bit about before in the Robin episode how while I was kind of doing more running and doing longer runs, like I was like, oh wow, Pop kicks ass for this. Well, I started out, I was just like, oh, I'll just listen to all my old favorite sad albums. This album means a lot to me for that reason. It kind of helped dig me out. And like the ending on Even If It Kills Me, which is obviously the title track, it's a very low song. It's not super optimistic, but it's basically just like, you know what? Dying trying is better than just like giving up. Yeah. And I wasn't like, don't get me wrong, I wasn't in that dire a place, but I was not in a great place.
But you need those. Even if you're not in the like looking at the edge places, you need those songs that kind of.
Yes. The extra kick in the ass of just try, man. It's better than not. It's better than just like accepting to this and steering into it. The album also has a lot of good try. Antonia is a funny, quirky, like Manic Pixie. I fell in love with the Manic Pixie Dream Girl kind of song. There are a few other really good, more sad songs. The Conversation, Hello Helicopter, Calling All Cops is kind of one of the better. Like if you want to hear how they use the Moog synthesizer, fire this song up. This is for real is like a good pop punky. I don't think that the highs on that album are quite as high as My Dinosaur Life or even Commit This to Memory, but it is the one that meant the most to me. And it is my favorite.
That's fair.
I then have Commit This to Memory at number 2, My Dinosaur Life at 3, and I Am the Movie at 4. But there's a significant drop off there where like all 4 of those albums are 4 of my favorite albums. Like,
I think that's fair.
I don't know if they'd all crack a top 100, but they'd all be in the mix somewhere.
Right.
I like all of those albums.
Cool.
Oh, I guess we got to pick a song off Commit This to Memory.
Yeah.
Mixtape then.
We've
come down a little bit.
I feel like there's a lot of directions we can go with this one.
There are a lot of directions. Yeah. I want to just put Even If It Kills Me on. It's a very.
I mean, I guess you could technically.
No, it's got to be off this album.
Okay.
At least we got to keep it.
Yeah. Okay. We got to keep some rules to it. Yeah. Okay.
I feel like the freeing thing about this one is we've tried to stay away from like the big song everyone would know. Mm-hmm. Like Everything Is All Right was a single, but not that big a single.
Yeah, like it's known, but it's not like.
I would say it's between that Time Turned Fragile, which is your favorite track, and it's just a great song, and then LGFUAD, which it doesn't give you the sound idea, but it gives you it just has a great place on the album, although it might not hit as well pulled from the middle of the album.
Fair.
Do you have a preference?
I mean, I feel like I think I agree with you in the sense that this is one where like the big quote unquote song deserves a place on it just because it is sort of one of the tenets of the genre in a way, especially like the influence it's had. I think everyone got into this album through Everything is All Right. So
Everything is all right.
Everything is all right because you're listening to us. Yeah,
wow.
Someday.
Wow, the ego on this guy.
Look, someone's got to have it.
Do we?
No.
I don't know that it's absolutely
we do
necessary.
Not.
I don't know that's absolutely necessary. Do you have any closing thoughts on Motion City soundtrack?
I don't think so. I mean, I've never seen them. And
okay.
So I almost went to their, I guess now, not farewell show, but on their first farewell tour in, I guess it was 2016.
Yeah.
They were playing here, and I almost went, and I forget why I didn't. And it's one of those shows that it doesn't happen a lot to me because I go to a lot of shows, but it's one of those shows that for the last 3 years, I'm like, damn, I should have come to that show.
Yeah, that's tough. Hopefully we'll get a chance.
The set list was good too. So
all right, we'll go with Everything Is All Right as the mixtape song. Guys, thanks so much for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Man, I feel like this is like the 3rd time in 8 episodes you've ruined the ending. Sorry, man. I'm
I'm leaving.
around. Jake's out of here.
Yeah. That was me leaving. Now I've ruined it.
Yeah. Now you ruined it. I was about, let me end the podcast. Jake.
Okay.
I know you don't want to go home.
No, I love going home. It's where my food is.
Yeah, where your cat you can stare at your cat and be like, "Are you thinking of a song?"
My cat could just bite me for no reason.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Next week's outro will be a little smoother.
Hey, please try the fish.